Hi everybody, welcome to what should be a pretty quick episode of Gaffer in Gear. So in today's episode we're looking at these Digitalfoto pocket lights. Now these things are really cheap. So this one's $24 to $30. This one's about $25 to $30 and this one's about $30 to $35. That's US dollars. So just because something's cheap doesn't mean it's good value. Okay, they do have a lot of issues with them, but the reason I'm reviewing them is they do have some interesting characteristics with them that could be of use. So I'll start off with the pros first. We'll have a look at this one, which is their W-S6. So this has a built-in battery. It has a bicolor white mode and an RGB color mode. Now the thing that's interesting for me is with the RGB color mode, it uses one set of emitters that are behind this lens here. So it actually gives you a hard light source. Now, I'm not aware of anything that's this small that runs off batteries that you can conceal and get a hard colored light source off. So let's take a look at that. So that's what I mean by a hard light source. You can actually see the hairs on my arms. So, you know, very, very sharp. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to use my hands like they're cutters. Okay, so you could get some cine foil and tape it to the edge of this and then, you know, fashion some barn doors very cheaply. So let's have a look at how that goes for cutting like that. So that does a pretty good job of cutting. Okay, now if you really want to conserve space, if you want a hard colored light and controllable, you can just put tape over the front of the lens here. So let's give that a go. So we're using very small amount of space, very small amount of footprint area. Okay, only that big. Let's have a look at that. And much to my surprise, there we go. We've got a very controllable light source. So I'm not aware of any other light that can do that. There's nothing else I know of that can do that. And, you know, $24. Now, here's the interesting thing. We're only using one emitter at the moment. I'm only using the red. Now, if I start mixing the multiple emitters together, because they're spaced apart a little bit, even though there's only one set, you'll start getting some color overlap or color fraying. So I'll just start doing that. Let's have a look. You can see we're getting blues on that side, red on that side. That's making the purple in the middle. So it's not perfect. It does have some color fraying on it. But if I take that tape off the doors, we've got some nice, you've still got some reasonably nice hard shadows in the middle. It looks like it's got some color fraying around it, but I think you'd be hard pressed to pick that. Now on the edge of the beam, of course, you do see some color fraying. But that's an interesting little, quirky little light for $24. That might come in handy for you for lighting your backgrounds. Now in terms of negatives with it, it does have one negative in the color mode. You can't desaturate. It's fully saturated colors and that's it. Now I just thought I'd jump in here and show you some little tricks you can do with a very small point source, because if you're fairly new to the industry and you've come in and everything's LED, you've probably got no experience playing with little sources like this, whereas when I started out, we had little 25 watt and 50 watt quartz halogen globes about that big, and we had little point sources we could play with. So I'm just going to show you a very technical lighting device. It's called a glass, right? You can find these in most kitchens. Now, because this is a point source, it acts really nicely through glass. So let's have a look at some of the cheap effects you can achieve. Now, I'm going to scroll through the colors. So I'm just going to put it straight through the glass there. Have a look at that. Okay, so I used to do this with little quartz halogen bulbs. So yeah, you can create some interesting little effects with a point light source just going through glassware. It's very, very, very funky, and that's interesting to see the color fraying or the multiple color overlapping comes in handy. And the other thing I used to do was use the glass sideways, so you can create funky little things like that. It's a very cheap way of getting some interest on a background or some color on a background when you are completely and utterly broke and can't afford any decent lighting equipment. Now it does have a white light mode, and the white light mode uses the diffuse section around the outside of the dome. So I'll just turn that on so you can see. Yeah, sort of fair enough for what it is, I suppose. But the white light mode is a real negative for me, so it's very magenta. All right, at 3200 Kelvin, the color vector score looks reasonable at 94%, and the spectrum distribution looks pretty good, but The CCT and white point accuracy is the big letdown. A lot of these sort of prosumer style lights tend to be very magenta. In fact, this is so magenta, if you wanted to mix it in with quartz halogen lights, you would have to put a half plus green on the front of it. Now at 5,600 Kelvin, its TM30 color vector score seems okay with a 93, but when you have a look at the individual CRI scores, you can see that something's not quite right with the unit. Now its white point is very warm and extremely magenta. So if you're going to correct this to use with other daylight fixtures, you would need to put between 3/4 to a full plus green gel on the front. So by the time you do that, you're not going to get much light out of it. So if all of that was a bit technical and doesn't mean anything to you, here's a simple explanation. We've got daylight here and we're trying to use the W-S6 as a fill light, and as you can see, it doesn't color match. So just a few other things to finish up on this light. It has the usual suspects list of special effects. So, it's currently set to candle, so that might come in handy. It's a small, cheap candle, candle light. That could come in handy. Special effects like cop car, it'd have to be a pretty small cop car. But it's $24. What do you really expect? So just to finish off, it has a shoe mount, and it has female shoe mount receivers on the other side, so you could mount more of them together. And it has a thread, and it comes with no accessories. It also doesn't have phone app control, so it only works manually. $24, fair enough. I would pass on it. The only thing I really like is the hard colored light mode. All right, so let's have a look at their tube lights now. This is the W100RGB and this is the W200RGB. So this is 7 watt and this is 6 watt. So not much difference between the two in terms of output. Now, negatives, same white point issues as these. Okay, so pretty much the identical sort of white mode. So good for close-ups as long as you like everyone being magenta. Now, other negatives, these ones do have a HSI mode that desaturates, but it desaturates to a really bad RGB mix. And I've had to check this multiple times to check the meter was correct. It desaturates to 25,075 Kelvin, and the white point is so far off where it should be, I can't even give you a color render score because the meter comes up with errors. So, again, really cheap light. So where would I use this? Well, quite often, if I'm doing, something that's low budget, meant to look sciencey, I get asked if they can borrow my lights and use them in set, things like my Aperture MCs and stuff like that. Now that's okay on a one-day shoot, but if you wanted lights to be on your set permanently as part of your set build, things like an Aperture MC kit might be a bit too expensive, whereas these at only $25 a unit are an affordable option. I mean, okay, it has its magenta cast, but as you can see here, if it's just a light source sitting in shot, just emitting brightness, you don't see that magenta cast. Okay, so it's, it's, as a prop light, I think it could find its place. It's got magnets on the back, so you could easily mount it to walls. In terms of mounting it to walls, you could just use a little piece of metal with some tape stuck to the wall, and then just stick the magnets onto that. And of course, you've got your RGB modes in them as well. So that's give you some idea. That's running at 24% brightness, so it'll run for a long time off its internal battery. So I think these do have their place as a prop light. I wouldn't use them for close-ups or anything like that, but if you've got something like a console and you're doing a low budget sci-fi film or whatever, and it just, the console doesn't look expensive enough. So many jobs I've been on, we just stick a light on top, and suddenly this looks like some important science fiction prop, and the only difference is the light. And at $20 or $25 a light, you should be able to get them through the budget for set building. But apart from that, I don't really see any like for it. And the thing that does set this apart for me for other pocket lights or tube lights is its small size. Everything else is about this size in terms of the smallest, and sometimes that's just way too big to use as a prop in set. I mean, it just wouldn't look right. Trying to get a big tube onto something. Anyway, that's these done. Next week's episode is on a pocket light also, but we're going extreme. We're going to have a look at the, what's this thing called? This is the DMG Dash. So we're going from $25 to $400. I mean, you can't get a bigger difference in products. Anyway, see you next week. Take care. I forgot to mention, not that it probably bothers you all that much, but the tube lights come with a USB cable for charging and a little floor stand.